Everyone, if you celebrate Easter, and happy Passover if you celebrate Passover. I'm Chef AJ and welcome to today's live. If you follow me, you know that I've been going live at least once a day, sometimes multiple times a day, just to entertain you or give you some interesting information, introduce you to some interesting people that I know, and to create a sense of community so we can think of something other than the virus, even though some of our speakers, that's actually what they have been talking about. I have a very interesting guest today that you might not have heard about. He comes all the way from the United Kingdom, and don't get confused when you see him because he looks a little bit like one of our very favorite plant-based speakers, but I promise you it's not him. And he has an interesting name. If you are old enough to remember the show Bewitched, which was one of my favorite shows growing up in the 60s, he has the same name as one of the characters from the show, but he is not that character, and nor is he the plant-based doctor that he looks like. He is his own person with a very interesting, unique, and inspiring story. I met him at a plant-based conference in Pasadena, probably 4 or 5 years ago, and I remembered him, and he remembered me. So please welcome Adam Stevens from the UK and from intelligenteating.org. Hi, Adam, how you doing?
Good, thank you. It's really nice to virtually see you again. It's absolutely lovely.
Now, you don't have glasses, but do people ever say you look a little bit like Dr. Greger?
Well, it's really interesting because he gave a talk over here at King's College London in 2016, and he had hair and no beard then. And I've got a picture with us next to each other, and then we've kind of done the same thing. So we've got a picture of before and after. I put them together, like a before and after, and it is brilliant. It got great engagement on Instagram. So it has been said, it has, yeah. I've got the treadmill as well, but I thought that's pushing it too much. Yeah.
That's terrific. Well, I know a little bit about your story, but I'm sure that many of our viewers are not yet familiar with you, even though we have some people that are originally from the UK, like Debbie watching. So why don't you tell us how you got involved with intelligent eating in 2011?
Well, we've only got an hour, so we'll keep the sensible version of it. The truth of it is, my journey in life started in 1979. Whether that makes me young or old, I don't know. It doesn't matter. But I was born with a very rare heart condition, and at the time, it was kind of deemed as sort of almost experimental surgery. Almost like a kind of band-aid solution. And the idea behind it was my heart was configured the wrong way as a plumbing problem, basically. We'll keep it like that. But it was the size of a strawberry, just like you've got in your background. And so the surgery that I had at that time, the success rate of me living into adulthood was really pretty slim. Now, there's a blessing and a curse with everything. There's a good and bad come out of all situations. And I survived the surgery, clearly, which is a great thing. But that's the best of modern medicine, without a doubt. It really is, those sorts of things. But what it's given me is access to some of the best and brightest in the field of interventional cardiology. Now, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't sign up for it if I had the option, but that's what happened. And so throughout my life, I've sort of noticed really that people are getting fatter and sicker, or both, through my annual hospital visits, and it's kind of like cardiology bingo. I go each year. I might just go for an echocardiogram. It might be a stress test. It might be doing something else. But I just noticed that everybody was getting bigger. I'm not talking about the patients. I'm talking about the doctors and all the nurses as well. And I was sort of thinking, well, hold on a minute, I'm starting to get bigger as well. And I thought, this is not good. I looked at my patient group and I thought, the same sort of things happening to them as well. Well, that's not good. And so I thought, right, I'm going to take it upon myself to get some bloods done. So I went off, did it through a private lab. And I looked at the numbers and I thought, they're not great numbers. This is going to go one way if I don't make some changes here. And that's an all too familiar story for many people. But when you've got an underlying heart condition, it's even worse. So you kind of think, well, what can I do for myself here? So I did what many people did. I thought, well, this is clearly just weight related. So I tried a bunch of different diets. and, you know, ranging from everything you can imagine, you know, all the ridiculous ones, all that we now know are ridiculous, but at the time the intent was good. And yeah, I lost some weight, but I repeated my bloods and they still weren't great. They still really were not great for somebody of my age. I thought that's not good. And then it got to the point in 2011, and this was the bombshell. This was what really drove it, was that my stepfather of 22 years, who was a former Royal Marine, Royal Naval officer, quite senior rank of Commodore, so that'd be a flag rank. So just one below an admiral. He'd done his career for 36 years in the Royal Navy. He'd retired with my mother down to the south of France, living what we would describe as a heart-healthy Mediterranean diet, or most people would describe it as that. And he had a great job. He had a great life. He was slim. He was trim. He didn't have any of the traditional risk factors that you would think that's going to cause a problem. And one day I got a phone call from my mother. And if anybody's ever had this sort of phone call, they will know exactly what I mean by this. It was one of those phone calls where something didn't seem right. My mother phoned me and she said, Adam, she said, something's happened to Nigel. Nigel's my stepfather. And I thought, okay, well, maybe he's been playing tennis and he's hurt his elbow, or he's been out on sailing and he's done something to himself, his knee or something. And she was like, no, Adam, she said, he's not here anymore. He's not here. And I'm saying, you know, WTF, right? As in, what's going, you know, well, what do you mean? And he just gone, age 62, just gone. And that made no sense whatsoever to me at the time. Now, that was the 27th of March, 2011. Now, that was horrible, absolutely horrible to go through. That collateral that it did to my family was devastating. My sister was, I think, 17 or 18 years old at the time, second year of university, absolutely devastating for her. I went into a mode of, you just do what you need to do. I drove from where I was living in the UK to the south of France where they were. A journey that usually would take about 12 hours. I did in about 7 hours. You just go into autopilot mode. And on the back of that, it was like, what do we do? We've got to repatriate my mother back to the UK. We've got to sell the villa they had. We've got to sell the yacht. We've got to bring a dog back. It's a topical word now, but the dog had to go into quarantine because it hadn't had the required shots for some reason. All these things that have gone around that people don't think about, and the ripple effect from that was just, it was just so difficult to comprehend how that could happen and how it was deemed normal. There was no post-mortem done. You know, it was, here's a man who's in his 60s. Well, that's just what happens to men in their 60s. And my background is one of physics. And so I would question things. I'll say, no, that's not normal. That should not have happened. You go through stages of, you know, maybe guilt or fear or anxiety or whatever, or combinations thereof, or grief. It's a very strange process. But once the dust settled, I'd already sort of had it on my radar that maybe a plant-based diet could have helped, but it needed to be quite specific. You know, not Oreos plant-based diet. We're talking about whole foods plant-based diet. Anyway, so I sat down, and this really was kitchen table stuff with my mother once the dust had settled. And I said, Mum, I said, I want you to watch these videos. And she said, Adam, they're boring. She said, there's just medical stuff, you know, it's like, and she did. She watched it. She watched the videos from Dr. Esselstyn and Dr. Campbell, Dr. McDougall. I said, Mum, I said, this is what's happened. I said, ultimately, you killed him. Your cooking killed him. Yeah, and we can't. And that was, and that I mean, that's the reality of it. I mean, it was, you know, it was tongue in cheek in a way, but sometimes a bit of dark humor kind of levitates the situation. It was just, and from there, and I said, we need to do something about this. because we're not the only family to have been affected in this way. Far from it. I said, this is going on all the time. And when I started to look at the data, how many people are dying of this every single day? And for how many people is it their first symptoms, their last symptom, which was exactly what happened to my stepfather. He was fixing a new toilet seat onto a toilet for my sister to come back from university for Easter holidays. And he was just gone while my mother was starting to make lunch. And that's horrible. So, and we thought, well, what can we do? And we thought, well, I'm a big believer that out of all bad comes good. I thought, maybe with this knowledge, maybe we can do something. And so I started to give talks on this, just to small groups of people at first, just saying, and I went through that sort of phase of sort of being almost annoyingly evangelical, and sort of almost wanting to sort of say, you're doing it wrong, this is going to kill you, kind of thing. I still do that sometimes, and it does annoy people. But that's because I know I'm right. It's difficult. It's a little bit like the conversation you have with Dr. McDougall, is that you can't challenge the evidence when it gets to this level, and that's what it was. But I remember this distinctly. I gave a talk, and it was I don't know if you got in the States, but we have a sort of Chamber of Commerce types events where you can go to, and on average you've got 40 to 50 people there, middle-aged men, typically accountants, attorneys, solicitors, these type of people. And I gave a 30-minute talk on the state of health in the UK, which is really pretty similar to it is in the States. There's not really much difference. A lot of people over here will say things such as, oh, but America's much worse. And actually, it's not the truth at all. It's pretty similar. And I remember halfway through the talk, I was dropping so many truth bombs that I was looking for where the fire exit was. I was thinking, I'm going to get lynched here, because I'm telling people, I was polarizing that audience. They were saying, you could see half the room wanted to get up and strangle me, and the other half were just nodding, going, this guy's right, this guy's right. But somebody came up to me afterwards and said, Adam, you've got to do something with this. If not for you, you've got to do it for other people. You have to do it for other people. And by this time, I'd already got myself down to the sort of weight that I wanted to be in. My blood work was in a really great place. So I was happy at that point. But it was on the back of that. And I told my mother about it, and she said, well, it needs a name. She said, well, who do you want to talk to? I said, people who are willing to listen, intelligent people who want to eat. I said, everybody wants to eat. And that was it, intelligent eating. And that's where it came from. And, and that started out with a little Facebook page with 1 like, which was me, and then 2 likes, which was my mum as well. And then it's just grown to the point now where I'm just like, wow, I started this little movement on the back of something that I had no idea. It was never ever meant to be any form of income generation at all. But people started messaging me saying, how can you help me? I said, well, I don't know, just do the same as me, go and watch the same videos and this type of thing. But it was only really 2013, 2014 when I really understood fully the work of Dr. Lyle. That's when you start to put all the pieces together. As I think, as you understand, you can have all the knowledge in the world, but until you understand that psychology, it's tough to implement, really.
Absolutely. Well, Susan has a question that maybe you can answer, but also I'd like to know more specifically what intelligent eating is and what you do. But Susan says, what can you do if you're the only one in the house who will eat whole food, plant-based, and they laugh?
Lead by example. Simple as that. That's my answer. Lead by example, because they'll stop laughing when they see the results. Because that's an ego thing. That's what's going on. People don't want to put their hand up and say, hey, what you're doing is probably quite a good thing. They'd rather laugh at you. So
it does make it more difficult, though, especially if somebody is, if they're susceptible to the pleasure trap when, living in an environment with, my heart.
It's difficult for sure. Yeah. And I wouldn't disagree with that.
Wow. So what is intelligent eating?
it's really, it's about education, really, because I think the biggest thing that I've learned over the last decade, what it's coming up to, of doing this, is there's one commonality. It's confusion. No matter who it is, regardless, and just like this irritating virus, it's just, it gets across all demographics of society. It's confusion. So intelligent eating is about explaining to people the relationship between what they eat and drink and habitually consume and how it's going to affect their health, short, medium, and long term. But my emphasis is on a proactive approach rather than a reactive approach, very much so. But that's a tough sell, as you know. That's a tough sell.
Do you give lectures? So tell us a little bit about what is it like, what are you giving lectures in England or doing workshops?
Really, all over. I've got a buzzing group online. To tell you the truth, 95% of the people I work with I never meet, but there's a real range of people. I might get somebody who's 20 years old who's got acne, that it's really hitting their self-esteem. Tends to be female, typically, that sort of age range. And then you've got people up to sort of about my age. I'm 40. And their sort of motivations might be really, I think it's more sort of power and beauty, I think, really, to sort of try and look good and so on. I think all of that crosses over. But my real core audience that I really get engaged and talk to are the people that they've kind of tried everything and they're kind of in round 11 and they're up against the ropes and they're saying, all right, I'll try this, I'll give this a go. But they're still skeptical. They're still skeptical because they've just been fed information for so many years. So when I'm saying I'm providing information, a lot of it's also helping people to unlearn some of the things that they've learned over the years. And I think that's really important. That comes down to belief systems.
So we have a question from Brenna. What's the best result you've ever had with a client?
Wow, that's a good question. Can I give two?
Can you have two best results? Of course, we love inspiring stories.
Yeah, I just try to think. There's two that I just really want to go at. Yeah, one was a 62-year-old man who came to me. He was scared. He'd had a heart attack 10 years prior. Then he found out he was type 2 diabetic. Don't get me wrong, he lived the life. He loved it. He had great fun during his time. He lost his manhood. All sorts of things had gone terribly wrong for him. And he was saying to me, he's saying, I don't want to be here anymore. He said, I can't work. He said, I'm falling asleep all the time. He was on, I think, 15 medications at one point. And I took him grocery shopping. I met with him several times each week. And over 3 months, the diabetes had gone. He went back, the HbA1c had dropped right back down. Bear in mind, I'm not a doctor here at all. I'm just a regular guy, right? But he had faith in me. And I said to him, the biggest thing you must not lose here is hope. And it was what was amazing with that story was I said to him, I said, I cannot promise you this. I said, it would be illegal, it would be immoral, it would be unethical. I said, but you will get laid again within the next 6 months. That's what I said to him. And he couldn't believe that. And he said, how? He said, how's that going to happen? And I said, Sterling, I said, just trust in the process here. Trust in the process. I said, you're being told misinformation, disinformation. I said, it's not the fault of the medical profession. I said, they're just given the wrong information, so to speak. You're being told you can't eat potatoes and you're type 2 diabetic. Anyway, that result went from a guy who was feeling like he wanted to give up on life and could barely walk half a mile a day to going and having a very, very exciting weekend in Amsterdam with a newly found partner and walking 21 miles around over that weekend. Now that is a beautiful story of giving somebody their life back. And the second one I really would like to share is a woman that approached me quite with a lot of skepticism. I find a lot of people are quite skeptical at first. Diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And she said, "Do you think you can help me?" And my honest answer was, "I don't know, but you're running out of options. And what's being given at the moment is not really helping. So we can try a few different modalities." And those are things which I'd learned through the work of Dr. Goldhammer, Dr. Lyle, Dr. Clapper. So we tried different things. And she went from having to be sent a catalogue of choosing what wheelchair that she would be given to being able to run and swim and so on within the space of 2 or 3 months. And that's just amazing. And all that comes down to is increased blood flow. It was just incredible. But yeah, I mean, what was the real modality there? It was a plant-based diet. But she got her life back. And it just it blows my mind. It really does. It absolutely blows my mind. When I look at that, it really does. It's just to take somebody from a place of just being terrified of the future to being so excited about the future. That was just wonderful. Really, really wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Well, thank you for the great question, Brenna. We have another question for Emma, but before, what's it like in general, the plant-based scene in the UK? Is it very prevalent? And what's it like for you now with what's going on in the world?
I think now in the UK, I think we're starting to wake up somewhat, which was kind of always my goal anyway. I wanted to be an anaesthetist, which was kind of to put people to sleep. I kind of found that fascinating. Now I spend my life waking people up. But the answer to your question here is really, I think it's similar to the States. It's mixed. If you're in Southern California, for example, where you are, you're going to find a higher prevalence of people who are open-minded, plant-based, a bit more forward-thinking. And there are pockets of the UK that are similar as well. I don't think it's particularly different, but I think during the current situation, people are having to be a lot more resourceful with what they've got. One, because of availability, but two, because they're being more conscious of money as well. So they're realizing that actually the meats and the processed foods and so on are expensive. So I think actually it's pretty similar. I don't think we're behind. I don't think we're ahead. I think it is directly comparable. I do. There are little epicenters of plant-based world, just as you have. That's the best answer I can give you.
Nice. So Emma's question is, my daughter is only 5 years old and wants to eat what I eat, but my partner wants her to eat meat. What can I do, please? I'm going to let Adam answer, but I'd like to answer it too, if you don't mind. First thing I would do is get a copy of Disease Proof Your Child and Fast Food Genocide by Dr. Joel Furman and read that with him or to him. And maybe have a session with Dr. Lyle, but I'll see what Adam has to say about that.
So the question is, my daughter's only 5 years old and wants to eat meats.
No, the daughter wants to eat like the mother. It sounds like the mother eats whole food plant-based, but the partner wants the daughter to eat meat. What can she do?
You know what? I think it's like any relationship. It requires communication. However, in a relationship, there can be conflict. So I think it requires a sitting down and a conversation about saying, well, what's the benefits of this, the pros and cons, not just the logical ones, but also the emotional ones as well, and kind of really working to get towards a common goal. What do we want to achieve? What do we really want to achieve here? I think communication. I really do. I don't think there's a better answer than saying let's communicate. Yes, absolutely. Get the books, read the books, look at that, and try and educate. But you've got to be careful when you're in a relationship with somebody. These are belief systems. They're very powerful, as you well know, AJ. So I think that's what my advice would be: is communicate. It really would be.
Are there foods that are, I've never been to England, I'll be honest, my cousin lives there and works there, but are there foods that you can make vegan that are like standard foods in England that now you've been able to make plant-based and delicious. I know you guys eat something, is it Marmite or something that you put on toast? I'd love to know what, I love to know what people eat in other countries that in general, and how people have veganized them.
Yeah, sure. Again, I'm going to give you the same answer with the plant-based thing. We are very much a melting pot, a cosmopolitan country, just as the United States are. So it's actually very similar. There's very little that we've got Whole Foods here, right? So really, it's very similar. And I know you're sort of you want some specific answers, but the reality is it's very, very similar, very similar. It really is, because we've got such a cosmopolitan country here. It really is. Whereas if you were to compare that to perhaps parts of Eastern Europe where you don't see that, then you might get a better answer. But my answer is it's pretty much identical. People will veganize anything here.
Nice. Well, Debbie says she loves Marmite. To be honest, I'm not even sure what it is. Can you tell me what it is?
It's like a yeast extract, essentially, but it's made from beef, I think. So it's like you can get vegan versions of it, but what actually is it? It's an interesting one. I very rarely would consume it at all, if ever. It's versatile. You could use it. It's one of those foods that you kind of would love or hate, and that's kind of when people say people are Marmites, so they love or hate them, kind of thing. But it's versatile. It can be used for cooking. It can be used to make a drink out of. It can be used for stock. Used for lots of different reasons. It's a bit like nutritional yeast in the sense that it's just really versatile as a food.
Nice. Mary is saying Marmite is nutritional yeast with a mass of salt. Don't think you would like it, AJ, but if you're brought up on it, it's delicious. That's true. Whatever we're brought up on, we tend to like. We do develop taste preferences for what we habitually eat. So, if you like, Adam, you can talk about your TED Talk, because Brenna, who's watching live, says she saw your TED Talk and your interviews with Dr. Clapper, Barnard, and Gregor, and wondering where you'll be speaking next.
Well, that's a good question, isn't it? I think a lot of us will probably wonder where we'll be speaking next and when. I think the goal really is. I mean, the face-to-face interviews that I had at the VegMed in London, which was fantastic. That was, I think that was the second or third time that I'd interviewed those particular doctors. I don't have an agenda at this stage because everything's being cancelled, and that's a tough one. But I think reaching out. I think what I'd like to do. I think I'd like to talk to Dr. Lyle again. I think that there's a lot of this statistical analysis that I'd like to pull out. I think that would be great if we can get to the point. I don't know, because the timescales on all these things are changing all the time. But certainly, I think another talk at Whole Foods would be good. I think that's important. Some of their bigger stores, there's a big store they've got in London, central London here. You've got a lot of people going in there with the best possible intentions and walking out with what's really not perhaps that great. And that's kind of like, so again, it's education. But I mean, if we can do things like this, which is an amazing way of doing it, then I think it would be fantastic to do some. I think to do some more group sessions along these lines. It's difficult at the moment. It's really difficult because things keep getting cancelled. Yeah. I had one booked for next month at a university, but that's obviously on hold.
What is your TED Talk about, and how did that manifest?
The TED Talk was about. It was telling me I mean, you can go on my website and watch it. You can, somebody wants to watch it in detail, but that was really about telling my story and my journey, and just kind of giving some examples. And obviously, they've got very strict rules with it being TED about what you can say and what you can't say. So I just kind of went through my story and explained what I did. But the real resounding message of it was really, well, there were two things. One was that why wait? Why wait until these problems occur? And two, you're being lied to by the food companies. And that really, I think, jolted quite a few people, but in a good way. It was really quite emotive. And I could see people in the audience sort of hugging their partners or sort of holding each other's hands and so on. And that was really, that's probably the most nervous I've actually been, because I just did it completely ad hoc, no script, nothing. I just said, you know what, I'll just tell my story and just explain it, keep it really simple. Most people have been practicing for weeks and months and so on. I didn't apply for it. I was invited to it, I was really humbled by that. Really humbled.
That's
It's
incredible.
amazing.
By the way, I just posted the link if
Oh,
anyone
thank you.
wants to see it. And apparently we have some people here that are watching from your country. And Rebalancer says Bovril is beef extract, but Marmite is vegan. That's good to know. And Ben says that it's a vegetable extract and it's amazing. Debbie says a little
That's the
goes a
one.
long
Yeah,
way. I'd like to
them.
try it. Anne says she loves London, lots of vegan options for eating out. And Emma says, who asked the question, thank you for the advice. She's also in the UK. And we have a question from Mary. Do you personalize a program for people who come to you? Is it a support group, personal coaching?
The answer is all of the above. All of the above. It depends on what somebody's trying to achieve. My background is very much one of saying, let's reverse engineer it. How do you feel at the moment? How do you want to be feeling? And let's see what we need to do to get you from that point to this point. And so that might be in a group setting, although I'd want to keep the groups quite small. That's important. I don't want people to feel that they are left out, but also where this is so emotive, in a group environment, if you find that maybe you've got 10 people and nine people are doing particularly well and one person isn't, they can feel really bad about themselves. So you've got to be quite careful. So, you know, there's careful assessment at the start with somebody to understand where they are, you know, and how they live and what they do, what they do for a job, you know, their whole environment and ecosystem. I need to have an understanding of that before pointing them in the right direction. And to be truthful, probably 70% of the inquiries that I get, I just point them in the direction of the free resources that are online, for example, such as Dr. McDougall's site, or Jeff Novick's fantastic video that's on at the moment for, I think, for free for a month to watch, Jeff Novick's fast food. So, you know, I say, you know, the information's out there. This is just what you need to be looking at. But then also, you know, when it's things that are beyond my expertise, I can explain them, but not so well as some other people. You know, I play to my strengths, but I also know where I'm not so strong. You know, I'll say, hey, look, you need to get in touch with this guy. His name's Dr. Doug Lyle, and he will help you with this particular problem. You know, when we're talking about problems such as, you know, food addiction, that's not really my speciality. So that's where somebody like I can then work in tandem with Dr. Lyle on something like that. So it's all of the above, and it can move in between. Somebody might start off at a lower level and then feel we need more help, and so on. But I tend to find once people are educated and it becomes a way of life, they never go back. I find the relapse rates are very low. The benefits outweigh any of it. It's just people love their lives. It becomes simple.
Terrific. Ben wants to know what's better for weight loss, diet or exercise?
Well, I think the answer to that is pretty straightforward. Diet is the answer. But I would add to that. I don't really just want to give that as just the answer. Exercise can be a bit of a false friend in some respects. Exercise is good, absolutely, no two ways about it. But I think where people have to be very careful, and I see this a lot, and you probably see this as well in the States, is that people will go out and they will do exercise, whatever that might be, just going for a run, or it might be going to the gym or something. They might go and do that for an hour, and they will come back and then they will go, I'm going to treat myself. I've been good, I'm going to treat myself. So exercise can be a false friend. So you need to be careful, because there's no point going out and burning 600 calories only to come back and eat 800 calories. So diet is the answer. Both is good, but we need to be careful. I think that's the best answer I would give for that.
Absolutely. If you joined us in progress, somebody's asking, my guest today is Adam Stevens, all the way from the UK, and his website is intelligenteating.org, which I've posted, as well as his TED Talk, and he's just talking about the work he's doing in the UK. So are you on lockdown as well in your country? Is sheltering at home also in your country at this time?
Yeah, we started, in my opinion, later than we should have done. It's quite a soft lockdown, but it seems to be effective. But yeah, absolutely, it's. I think it's pretty similar to what we certainly didn't do it as well as your governor did. Put it that way. But California has always been progressive. Yeah, just to be honest, right? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the same. It's essential travel only. You can go out if you need to go grocery shopping as infrequently as possible. You can go out for any medical need, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty similar. I imagine. Yeah.
Terrific. Janelle says, when two major whole food plant-based doctors disagree on how to lose weight, what can the reader do to find the correct information? I'd like to answer that if you don't mind, and then I'll ask Adam to answer it. Well, first of all, I always go with the person that has had the weight problem and lost weight. So when I'm looking for help with finances, I go to the person that has great finances. When I'm looking for a haircut, I go to somebody with great hair. So if I was looking to lose weight, I would look for somebody that actually lost weight and did what they did, and that's number one. And so, but the second thing is, if two people disagree, try both their styles and do whichever one works for you. And I'll let Adam take the question now.
I think I parallel what you've said, quite honestly. I really would. I mean, it's a case of, when I first started on my journey, I weighed maybe 180 pounds, and now I weigh 140. Now, would I have hired me when I weighed 180, giving fairly similar information to somebody who weighed 140? Well, I'd probably go with the person who weighed 140. They're a product of their product, basically. That's what it would come down to. So I would echo your answer. I think.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember there was a quote, I can't remember it exactly, from Tony Robbins, that if you want success in one area, find somebody that's already had that success and then try to duplicate it. Great answer. Thank you. So Rita has a question. Do you see improvement in joint and low back pain with whole food plant-based? And if so, how long before one would notice improvement?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's typically inflammation. I mean, I'm going to have to make some assumptions here, but typically it's going to be driven by inflammation. How quickly? It depends. It depends which modality you use. But and this is not medical advice. This is something you do need to speak to your doctor about before doing these things. But fasting is an incredibly powerful modality for reducing inflammation. So how quickly? I've had people that have come to me with similar complaints, concerns, 2-3 days, sometimes 24 hours, improvements, significant improvements. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about what you eat and what your exercise habits are. People always want to know. I interviewed an Indian family yesterday, and they were both medical doctors, and everybody wants to know, what do they eat and how much do they exercise?
That's it. It's a great question. I'm a bit of an oddball, I'll be honest. I have Asperger's. So I think you pronounce it Asperger's, but whatever, it's the same thing, right? So I'm quite routine with what I eat. I'm more to like the kind of Dr. Lyle's sort of end of a spectrum, that I can eat the same thing every single day, right? So I'm completely comfortable with eating oats in the morning, and I can do that forever. But at the moment, my go-to in the morning is about 1 liter of water, rice, spinach, broccoli, tomatoes, carrots. That's what I'll probably, at whatever time. And when I say for breakfast, I'm not talking about when I first wake up. when I first wake up, I'll drink water for the reason that I'm a land mammal and all other land mammals seem to drink water. So why would we be any different? That's my logic behind it. Which I think it would be very difficult to disprove that as such. But straying away from that, really for me, it's simple. I just go for the simplest, easiest option. So slow cooker, chop up a bunch of veg, whack it in there, go to bed, wake up, my place smells great the next morning. And then I can just batch it up, and it's easy, it's cheap, and it tastes great. For me, it's simple. But that's only because I've been through that process of getting myself out of that pleasure trap. It's not easy at first, unless you are a particularly good cook. I am not a particularly good cook, and I'm aware of that. But that's okay. With respect,
well, oh, excuse me.
No, that's right. The second part, with respect to exercise, at the moment it's a bit more difficult because of the restrictions as such. It's really interesting. One of the allowances here is that you're allowed out once a day for daily exercise, and people now are exercising more than they ever were before, which is really interesting actually as a result of that. But for me, just due to my underlying condition, I struggle with compound exercises, so sort of strength training. So for me, it's more about walking, and that's really all I need to do, to be honest. And I'm happy with that. That gets me to where I need to be. But when it comes down to the more exciting cooking and the more interesting cooking, my partner does the cooking. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
If I want something that's really like on your level, she does it, and it's made with love, and that's the difference.
Nice.
You know, a bowl of rice and spinach is maybe, well, not so sexy to some people.
I think it sounds great. We have a very nice comment from Linda. Thank you for being here live every day. It feels like you and the folks you're interviewing, like Adam Stevens, are my connection with the outside real world. Well, thank you so much. Louise wants to know, does he have my cookbook? Well, actually, he does. That's how we met, was at a conference. And please don't show what I signed, because it is a little bit embarrassing. But yes, he does have my cookbook. And at least he has my first cookbook. And so, but, you know, Adam, I don't have, as far as I know, I don't have Asperger's, but I'm like you. I think especially people that are struggling with their weight, with the pleasure trap, that are very busy, eating repetitive meals that you like is really the key to the kingdom for long-term success.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is. When you look around the world, look at the world, if you looked at it through, I was watching one of the launches from SpaceX, and they were showing the view of the planet looking down, and it's incredible. You look at our planet, and you look at the planet through a big lens like that, and you just look at the healthiest populations. They pretty much eat the same thing every single day. It's simple. You know, we've got so much choice, or we did until this situation has occurred, that people would just jump around and flitter, and they wouldn't give it enough time to let any true success occur. I think so. It's about building and instilling those habits. This is a wonderful opportunity now to start to get creative and inventive and enjoy food for what it really is, and only consume what you need. I watched a wonderful film last night called The Platform on, I think it's called Platform, pretty sure it is, on Netflix, about people who are being in solitary confinement and about being in jail and so on. And it's about only consuming what you need. And this, one of the positives to come out of this, I feel, will be that people will maybe there'll be start to be a shift in conscientiousness. I don't know. I'm hopeful.
Yeah. You know, if you don't mind, because you mentioned it, and that you have Asperger's, I don't know much about that, but I hear a lot of times from people that they have children with different things like Asperger's, and that's why they can't eat healthfully. Can you comment on that? Have you had this condition your entire life?
That's a good question. So people had said to me, I was deemed a difficult child, right? And when I was at school, there was no assessment for autism as such. I was just difficult, the quiet one, the guy. I was the last one to get picked, for sports, but I was the guy that everybody copied their maths homework from, right? But I only got diagnosed very recently. And I did that through somebody, through video conferencing, who was in San Francisco. And I chose that person because I thought, well, if you're going to choose somebody to get that diagnosis, why not go to where there's most likely the highest prevalence of people with some form of autistic spectrum disorder. I don't really like the word disorder, which is typically going to be around Silicon Valley. So I found somebody there, did that. So that's only something that I've recently diagnosed with, is to try and understand myself. And I think with children, I think it's about understanding, and I think this is where parents can be really helpful, is if they can learn more about what it means, then they can really help their child. Because it's not about, an example of that might be, a child might say, well, I don't like eating a banana, for example. Okay, fine. But what about if you take a banana and an orange and an apple and cut it up and make it into like a fun face or an animal or something like that? It becomes an activity. It becomes a pleasure, something that actually they enjoy doing. Because it's not just about how food tastes, as you know, it's about texture and color and all these things as well. All these things, and it's a lot of these things, and people that are on the spectrum as such, and I think we probably all are to some degree, they tend to be a bit more sensitive to certain different things. So, and it's just about learning. It's about learning. But again, it goes back to communication. But it's going beyond what is the food. It's going, what does that food do? What's the texture? How does it feel in somebody's mouth? How does it make them feel after they've eaten it? So it's about understanding that might be different for one child to a different child. You might have somebody who's got two children, and one child might be on that spectrum further up for more formally diagnosed, and the other child might not be. So it's about recognizing those differences as well and embracing them. I think that's probably how I'd answer that.
Absolutely. I have a question from Janelle. Adam, do you have any encouragement on how to influence stubborn family members? I feel like it will be too late by the time they figure it out, and I just can't accept that.
The way I do this, what I tend to do is I tend to take the logic out of it for the first thing, remove logic, because the logic doesn't work, particularly when it's somebody close. Family is really quite difficult. So what I mean by that is I start to go, look, you're going to need to build some emotional drivers in here. What's going to be so the first thing I do is take them out of the equation and say, well, all right, let's forget about you. But if you don't do this, you could be being selfish. Now, I wouldn't say this to everybody. It's just an example. You could be being selfish. But let's think about this for a moment. You might well be right. Keep doing what you're doing. But how about try and prove me wrong? And let's start to build a list of fun things that you actually used to do, past pleasures, for example, that you no longer are able to do. That type of thing. And you often find when people say, oh, it's too late, that actually, if you start to push them back to maybe 20, 30 years prior in their life and start to remind them of things they used to do, which they no longer do anymore, and often it is for health reasons, they've slowed down, and say, how would you feel if you could do that again? How would that make you feel? And start to really dig into the emotion and say, and what would that mean to you? And start to really get down to the root cause of it. And that's what I find is actually quite effective. There are other ways, but that I find is effective. Looking at somebody's past pleasures and what they used to love doing that they can't do anymore.
Absolutely. That I was interviewing the doctor yesterday, and he said that's how he works with his patients. Like he doesn't just tell them to get healthy and what to do. He says, why do you want to get healthy?
Yeah, because without the root cause analysis as such, without having that why behind the what, then it's never going to work. It's set to fail. It's like being told what to do. That might work for a very short period of time, but it's highly unlikely to succeed long term. Highly unlikely in my experience. And I think you'd probably echo that.
Great. Nadej says it's great. explanation about Asperger's. Thank you. It makes perfect sense. Have you ever talked to Dr. Esselstyn about it sounds like your heart condition was like a congenital, correct? You had it since
Right.
birth. So the diet really wouldn't have made a difference necessarily, but I'm assuming that the diet makes a difference now. Have you ever discussed it with one of the plant-based doctors, your unique condition?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually it has made a difference. And this is what's really interesting actually is I have spoken to Dr. Esselstyn over the telephone about it, and what was the event called Plant Stock in 2014 on the beautiful family farm they've got. But I did have a conversation, and he said to me, he said, Paul's law, he said it's going to apply to everything, and I appreciate that not everybody will understand that. It's the law in physics about blood flow. He said, there's no reason why I wouldn't make some improvements for you. And I said, I agree. Now, when I went and saw my consultant cardiologist, which I do each year, although I probably won't this year, and unfortunately he's retiring. He's been my cardiologist of 30 years. He said to me, he said, Adam, he said, when we look on MRI, he said, we've seen improvements. And when we've looked on echocardiograms, as Doppler, he said, we've seen improvements in your ejection fraction. He said, we don't normally see that in your patient group. He said, people tend to get worse. He said, what have you been doing? And so diet actually does have a huge influence on it. So it is actually really, really quite powerful. So where a normal conversation with a cardiologist would be, the consultation is they're giving you advice. What was really interesting was this person was asking me. He deemed me a patient expert in that arena, but it's not just about the cardiology side of it. You know, I mean, as we both know, the whole body's interconnected. You've got the entire cardiovascular system. So, you know, if we can improve heart function by a little bit, it's going to improve function everywhere else. It's really straightforward. So the answer is, it can't, diet will not correct my problem, but it's probably given me a few more years of life. I think that's what it happened.
That's great. You have a free PDF on your website. I believe it's called Healthy Eating Made Simple. You want to talk about it and tell people how they can get it and connect with you if they'd like to?
Yeah, they can just jump on the website and put their first name and email in. It will ping them a PDF. I'll be honest about it. It's not fully plant-based as such, but what it does is it talks about reframing reasons for eating, because it's just, the PDF is very simple, just to get people in. And the reason I do that is because words such as vegan scare people off still. And I'd rather get people at a point where I say, you don't have to dive into the swimming pool at the deep end. Any improvement is going to be good. And then let's start you on the journey. And as you start feeling better and realize you're saving money as well, then you start to go, why would I stop doing this? Why would I stop doing this? And then it becomes a positive feedback loop. So people can download that PDF, absolutely have a look at it. It's just 7 simple things that they can make changes to. Pretty straightforward stuff. And it's been downloaded like 300,000 times or something now. It's amazing.
That's
wow.
Amazing. That's terrific. Amy says, Chef AJ, where do I order your book? Amazon would be a great place, Barnes and Noble. And Claire says, as family members watch my health improve, they start to go whole food plant-based at their pace. Then they own it and find their own why. That's great. And Janice says, yes, start the journey and you get better with each step. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. What did you do before? I mean, before this was your work, what was your profession before this?
I was a sales director for quite a large fire safety company, and actually there's some parallels with what I do, because people don't really die in fires in the way that they used to so much. Now it's more about education. So I was managing a team of 80 people who would be going out and installing fire extinguishers and sprinkler systems and fire alarms and so on. And they're useful things to have, don't get me wrong. But there's a great analogy in there that actually, if we educate people about how not to start fires in the first place, this stuff's not needed. And so actually it translated over quite nicely. So it's the same thing.
That's a beautiful metaphor, actually. So
Yeah.
either way, you're putting out fires.
Well, let's start the fire in the first place. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I hope I get to come to England sometime and see you in person. But as you mentioned, we're not traveling anywhere, either of us. So
No,
you
at
never
this
know.
stage, it's so frustrating because myself and my partner, we were maybe an hour from you and we flew back to the UK on the 26th, I think it was, of February. I wish we'd stayed in California. I really do.
Wow, then you could have been quarantined here.
I would prefer that, quite honestly. I think you got better weather.
Well, it's, let's see, let me tell you exactly what it is today. We have incredible weather. Oh, it's only 77 today.
Okay, so that's 25 degrees Celsius in our language. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Only. Right.
Sin says, my biggest problem is salt. It's tough for me, but only 2 weeks in, so hopefully I will lose my love for it. Well, it can take more than 2 weeks, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, salt's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, when I give talks to larger groups, and I have a slide that I put together, I mean, and you'll know this as well, of course, AJ, 80–90% of the salt most people consume is from processed foods. It's not from the salt that you add. So, first of all, the point you make is going to take longer than 2 weeks. That down regulation of sensitivity to salt is going to take 6 weeks probably minimum for most people. But if you want to use a little bit of salt to make a little bit of what you might determine as bad, to encourage you to eat a ton of great stuff, then so be it. I don't see a big problem with that. I think
exactly. That's how Dr. McDougall says, if you're going to use it, you use it on the surface where the taste buds can taste it, whereas you don't cook with it where it dissipates anyway and you can't taste it.
Exactly. Yeah, quite.
Yeah. Well, is any last questions for Adam? And it's been so fun talking to you. It's fun talking to people from other countries. I recently interviewed a chef from Australia, and it's just fun hearing different. I love your accent and hearing different perspectives. I always like to know what it's like being plant-based in other parts of the world.
Thank you. It's it's interesting, and I never think I have an accent. But
because everybody sounds like you, right? But it's
no, we have a lot of regional variations, just as you do in the States. But I never think of myself as having an accent. But obviously, on your channel, people are going to go, yeah, he has a different accent. But yeah,
I know. I want to ask the last question just because it's just for fun. So I'm sure you've heard of the show Downton Abbey. Is it as popular that, I mean, I don't really watch television very much. Actually, about a year and a half ago, I stopped completely. But when that show was on the air, that show was my life. It was really one of the best. I mean, I literally cried on the last episode. I love those people so much, especially Bates and Anna. Was it as beloved in your country as it is in our country, Downton Abbey?
I'm going to have to give you the answer of, I think so, probably, but I've never watched it.
You've never watched it? Oh my God, it's such a beautiful show.
I don't even have a television. I bought a television just before Christmas. I watched one documentary called Minimalism and then returned the television. I don't watch it. I don't watch the news. I don't watch television. It's not my preferred source of it. But I think it probably was as popular here. But I think what we do export very well is our drama and film. So yeah, I think probably is the answer to your question.
Well, I love your answer that you don't have or watch television, because I have a television, but I don't watch regular television. One thing I never have watched is the news. So I think what we feed our mind is as important as what we feed our body.
I couldn't agree more. No, 100%.
No, well, we have a nice comment. Well, Debbie's saying I should watch Call the Midwife on PBS. So thank you for the recommendation. And Jennifer says, I recently changed my whole food plant-based diet to eating more potatoes, beans, and rice After watching your videos, I want to tell you it made a huge difference and weight loss started again. Absolutely. Do not be afraid of starch. My sister did some work in England once and she said, you have, and I don't know what this is, but she said this is what she ate because she follows the same diet, something called jacket potatoes. What are those jacket potatoes?
Baked potatoes, just potatoes that you put in your oven. That's
Oh,
all.
okay.
Yeah.
I don't know
So
why
we're
they're
calling
called.
it jacket because it's just in the skin. That's what we're talking about. That's it.
Nice. Do you have the fast food that we have here, like Wendy's, or is it the same? And do you have the same terrible eating that we have here in some ways?
Um, for the most part, I think Wendy's is maybe 4 or 5. I think across the UK there was, but I think they died out. Taco Bell, I think we've got maybe 10 across the UK. But the big ones like a McDonald's and a Burger King, yeah, it's the same. This is the thing. People say, a lot of people here will say, "Oh, it's so much worse in the States." It's not. It's the same. It's exactly the same.
But do they change it? Because when I was in Japan, the McDonald's had different offerings. So is the McDonald's, for example, in England have different offerings than the McDonald's here?
There is a slight difference, but not a big difference. In France, for example, where I was in January, that's a bigger difference. The menu is very different and orientated around their cuisine, and you can get beer and wine and things like that. So yeah, but in the UK, no, we're very much similar to yourselves.
Nice.
We're very much
Um,
closer, I think.
Blue Jay says, a fellow UK person here, Hertfordshire. Happy Easter to both of you. And same from, oh, hi, Sharon. And Eileen says she cannot find the PDF. It's at www.intelligenteating.org, correct?
Yes, yeah, it will. It might take a few minutes to come through from the autoresponder, but yeah.
Okay, I'll see if I can find it on the website and post a link. Well, Adam, it's just been so fun catching up with you, and thank you for the work you do in your country. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you another time in another place.
Absolutely, and hopefully California will be lovely. I'd be delighted to come back.
That would be great. And thanks to all of you for watching during this Easter Sunday. Happy holidays to you. And please come back tomorrow around this time when I'll be interviewing Chef Darshana Thacker from Forks Over Knives. Thanks again, Adam, and take care.
Thank you. You too. Thanks, Shay.
Bye.